The NBA regular season is almost over, y'all. I know it's kind of sad, but there's only like 6 or 7 games left for most teams. And if you're in my boat, being a Chicago Bulls fan, aka a team that isn't going to have any relevancy in the playoffs, you're already starting to look at the draft to be like, who's going to be the savior for our team going forward? So I'm going to give you all my thoughts on the latest prospects in this most up-to-date Bleacher Report mock draft, but right before we do that, make sure you guys subscribe. We're on our way to 1,000. Yeah, I know, YouTube plugs and everything. Just deal with it and go hit the subscribe button, okay? Let's get into it. Alrighty, I can only imagine who's going to be number 1, Alexander Sarr to the Detroit Pistons. Now, here's the thing, right? So Alex Sarr, probably the best player in this draft, at least in my opinion from everything I've watched on him. Not only can he play like defense like at the rim, he can go out and guard people on the perimeter. He's got a tremendous motor, which is huge for big guys, right? He's shown that he can shoot a little bit. But here's the thing, like, is he that good to where it makes sense for the Pistons to draft at a spot or in a position that they've already kind of got filled with Jalen Duren? You could probably convince me that Sarr has a higher ceiling than Duren, but does it make more sense to maybe like trade back a spot or two and then maybe end up with like a Risacher or something like that later in the draft? We'll talk about him, but I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily dig that fit on the team. I feel like there's just a lot of other things going on and they need more of a connecting piece in Detroit right now between Ivy, Cunningham, Sarr, and Duren. That's why I think Risacher just fits a little bit better there, but Alexander Sarr probably should go number 1 in the draft, most likely. I really like his talent. One thing you guys will notice, and for those of you that don't know, when you play overseas, a lot of times they really favor the more, we'll say, mature players, literally the older players, right? So you'll be like, why did he only average like 8 points a game and like some rebounds or whatever? It's like, okay, look, they just don't play the younger guys as much there. So just know that going into it. It's fine. Sarr looks like an amazing prospect. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't go number 1. Number 2 to the Wizards, Rob Dillingham. Who are they comparing them to? Darius Garland. Okay, I see that. I'm guessing, yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. Okay, that was the comparison for the last one. The Darius Garland one is kind of interesting here. I get it because shorter, shiftier, shot-creating guard. I get that. I'm not sure I like the Wizards picking this here, and I don't know if it's because I'm not high on Dillingham or if I just don't think that there's like a point guard worth taking here in general, or maybe I just like Risacher a little bit more and I think that he should go at least 2 in the draft. But anyway, let's talk about Dillingham. So Dillingham is an offensive player. Like that's what he does, right? He creates shots, gets pretty good assist numbers and everything, shoots well from the field. That's awesome. People are going to question, though, his ability to create at the next level because he is pretty small. All said and done, like, what do they have him listed at? Yeah, 6'3", 176. Like, the height's solid, but man, that weight is low. And, like, who is he going to be able to defend at that size? And that's kind of where the questions are going to start to creep up, especially, like, when people start getting into him more, and it usually causes more turnovers, at least from the film that I've watched. So, and let's remember, this draft class isn't elite. We know that. Like, we don't need to harp on them or anything, but you still got to take the talent that's available to you. I like Dillingham as a top 10 pick. It's not like I'd put somebody there in front of him at like point guard at this point, but man, I'd have a really hard time taking him with the second pick. I'd probably trade down, and man, if he's going to Washington, man, I just don't like his chances there. I've got some connections within the Washington Wizards organization, and let's just say I know for a fact that there's not a way to develop people there. It's just not the place you want to end up. So sorry, Rob Dillingham, but yeah, a little bit high for me at 2. Next up, we got, Ron Holland, a.k.a. the right-handed R.J. Barrett, but you guys are comparing him to Cam Whitmore. How do y'all even know what Cam Whitmore's game is? He doesn't even know what his game is right now. But yeah, Ron Holland moving up to 3 despite him not playing recently. That's kind of interesting, actually. So Ron Holland, like I said, he's right-handed RJ Barrett. Attacks the rim, very strong, your typical NBA wing, very athletic, a lot of defensive potential, but doesn't really shoot that well. And that's the big concern. If he could shoot, you could probably move him up to number 1 in the draft, right? Like that's how much talent is within him, but he played in the Ignite, wasn't the most efficient, but who really is in the Ignite? That's why they're kind of shutting it down. But sending him to Charlotte, what does that look like then? So that means that you're running a LaMelo Ball, Ron Holland, Brandon Miller with Mark Williams and maybe Miles Bridges if he comes back or something. It's a very athletic team with a lot of length and versatility, which is cool. I don't mind the fit at all, but it's always concerning when these guys can't shoot coming in, and you hope that they develop that. But if you're Charlotte, you probably maybe need to realize that, hey, we're not very good at developing talent. Maybe we should take somebody that's a little bit more put together right now, but that's not what they're going to do. They're going to draft on potential like they always do, and the Charlotte Hornets will probably ruin whoever it is. But Brandon Miller has actually been pretty good for them, and with them not having their head coach picked out yet, I have a hard time envisioning how everything's going to happen, but hopefully they instill more of an offense than they did last year, or this last season, because they were like number one in ISOs last year, which is like, why? Who's doing that? But anyway, Ron Holland, again, would rather have Risacher. Number 4, the Spurs. There he is, Zaccharie Risacher. We just did a whole video on him. Go click there, I guess, to go see it. YouTube things. But anyway, Risacher, to summarize what we talked about in that video, I compare him to Michael Porter Jr. They comparing him to Harrison Barnes. I don't really see that comparison, honestly. I see a guy that's an elite catch and shoot player. While he's cooled off, he was like scorching hot this whole season from 3. I know it's cooled off in recent games that I've watched, but you know what? It's whatever. Shooting happens. I look at his like jump shot and everything, and I think it looks phenomenal. And that's one of my specialties when I was like up as like a player development coach in the league, was I dealt with shooting form. So I like to think that I have a pretty good references to that stuff. But one of the things we keyed in on is like his athleticism. It like comes and goes, and I honestly think he's still growing into his body. Like, I feel like there's a lot more explosiveness that's going to come as he gets older. So like in a year or two, I think his athleticism, while it's already pretty solid, is actually going to be at a higher level. So I'm very curious about that. As far as the fit in San Antonio, oh my God, this would be a match made in heaven. 2 French guys. He can space the floor for Wembanyama because he doesn't need to have the ball a ton, so he can work with him. I think that's a match made in heaven. You throw him in with Sohan at the 4, he plays the 3. Whatever you want to do at point guard is there, and you have Vassell. That's a nice young core, man. That is a really nice young core. I'd love to see that. Number 5, Donovan Clingan. It is about time this guy started getting respect. I've been saying through all these mock drafts that we've been doing, because he's been at like 20 and then like 18 and then like 13. I was like, look, if I'm a team that needs a big, I'd just take this guy like top like 8, because I know he's a capable NBA starting center. Like, he just will be. I promise you, just by looking at him. Who are they comparing him to? Jakob Poeltl. Just make the Walker Kessler comparison already. It's fine. We understand that they're both like 7'2" white guys. Like, we get it. But yeah, Clingan has been possibly the most influential player in March Madness. Edey probably up there as well, along with like Terrence, Shannon Jr. or something like that. But Clingan is just a defensive wall in himself, like, because he's very coordinated for his like size. Because I mean, you're getting 7'2", 280 that moves up and down the court pretty well. So you're just getting basically a whole new defense as soon as you draft this guy, because you can throw him in right away. He's NBA size. You've got an elite rim defender. That's what you're getting. So I'm not surprised to see him going 5 to Portland. The Ayton fit with like Rob Will is kind of interesting. I feel like they're going to try to move Robert Williams somewhere this offseason. That just seems to make sense to me. But I don't like the Ayton fit in Portland anyway, especially if you're going to try to develop Scoot Henderson, which, when does Portland ever develop anybody anyway? But that's a whole nother thing. But I would much rather see him play next to Scoot Henderson than like Ayton does, because he'd be more of a rim runner. He'd be more of a dunker spot type of guy. That's what I would like to see. But yeah, I'm happy that Clingan's getting the respect he deserves. Number 6, Reed Sheppard to the Toronto Raptors. I understand this positionally. They need more like actual guards in Toronto. So that makes some sense. You get some immediate shooting. You could use some more of that in Toronto as well. Let's just talk about Reed Sheppard in itself for a second. Reed Sheppard is a 6'3" combo guard. Combo guards are not as good of a thing as they used to be. What I mean by combo guard is that he plays the 1 and he kind of plays the 2, because he's got kind of both the skill sets and he's in between on sizing. Like, ideally, he'd be 2 or 3 inches taller. He'd play the 2. He'd be a very nice, like, Pat Connaughton type, Grayson Allen, things like that. But because he's 6'3", 180 pounds, you're like, okay, he's more of a point guard size. Like, he does have some ball handling ability, but it's not like elite. He doesn't have like the quickest first step, but he can hang in the air to finish a little bit. So it's like, okay, who's he going to guard? When you don't have a for sure position, a lot of times you don't have a position. I can see Reed Sheppard coming in right away and running off screens, being a really nice off-ball guy that can sometimes catch and attack and keep the offense moving, which is cool, but he's going to be a lethal shooter regardless, because he was a probably the best three-point shooter, one of the best three-point shooters in the country this last year, and that's awesome. But again, defensively, what do you do with him then? Like, can he become a JJ Redick type where he's just so like lethal from three that it doesn't matter? I don't know. I just have a hard time envisioning him playing point guard, and I have a hard time seeing him guard anybody above a point guard. And even then, like, some of the bigger point guards in the league, like a D'Lo, or I don't even know, like, even just take like a Spencer Dinwiddie or something. How the fuck does he guard like a Spencer Dinwiddie even? So I don't know. I that's where I struggle with things, but he can get bigger, he can get stronger. Who knows? A Kirk Heinrich comparison, by the way, that's messed up. Kirk Heinrich had more to his game than that. Kirk was a true point guard. But anyway, Memphis Grizzlies, Stephon Castle. No Cody Williams yet, interestingly enough. But this move makes a ton of sense. Who are they? They're comparing him to RJ Barrett. Okay, that one, I can see that one too. I can see an RJ Barrett comparison there as well. So Stephon Castle, another UConn guy. UConn knows how to make pros at this point. I have no doubt that Stephon Castle will come in and be able to contribute to an NBA team right away. I don't think it's going to be offensively, though, outside of transition. Nice size wing and everything, right? 6'6", 215. That's awesome. He's going to fill out a lot more, get a lot stronger. He's got a wide wingspan. Great. He plays great on-ball defense and off-ball defense already. We love that. The NBA needs as many guys like this as possible, so you're getting a value here, especially in Memphis, where you don't have many guys like this. So it fits perfectly. I think that's awesome. Offensively is where you start to get a little more questions. He doesn't have a clear jump shot, like one that, like, it just hasn't been reliable all season. He does have like a high motor in terms of like catching the ball and just like attacking the hoop, which is very cool. That's a useful skill in itself that helps keep the offense moving so that you can eventually find a shooter. That's really cool. I just wonder, when you don't have that jumper, like, what can your ceiling really be? And obviously there's a critique for everybody in every draft, right? But I do like a lot of the skills that he's bringing to the table. And you'd like to hope as well that because he's coming out of UConn, he's going to know how to play in a system pretty well, because they do run an NBA style like offense. So you'd hope that he'd really be able to be the kind of a glue guy for a team. But I don't know how high his ceiling is, but I'd like to think that he'd be able to come in and be an effective NBA defender next year. Next up, we got Nikola Topic. That's right, the man of mystery, Goran Dragic. Probably a fair comparison. Obviously, he's quite a bit bigger at, the 6'6", about 200 pounds. But yeah, Nikola Topic. So essentially, Nikola Topic was just killing everybody in the pros or whatever, and people were like, oh, wow, this guy's awesome. Like, he wasn't, like, shooting the ball necessarily great, but he attacks the rim, like, ferociously, sees the game extremely well. You're like, oh, wow, an 18-year-old that's doing this, that's going to get everybody's attention right away, because a lot of times it just is harder to play offense in Euroball, and that's just how it is. But then he got moved up to, like, an even, like, higher division and everything. He played, like, 2 games, and he's been hurt ever since, unfortunately. So I don't have a ton of film to be able to give you a great analysis on it, because I need to see him against that kind of competition and everything. But from the little bit I've seen, high motor, good at the rim, things like that, very good passer. That's all awesome. Those are things that you expect out of the Euro prospects, right? They usually come a little more well-rounded. I'm sure the jump shot will be a question. I'm going to need to see some more recent film to evaluate it even more. Throwing him on the Rockets makes absolutely no fucking sense at all. They've got enough people that are going to handle the ball between Van Vliet, Amin Thompson, Jalen Green. I don't see any world where they don't take like a wing or something in this next draft. Like, I think if Cody Williams was available right here as Stephon Castle, that would be their pick. But I don't see any world where they pick Nikola Topic. I don't understand why that makes sense. Utah Jazz, Matas Buzelis. Yes, let's put another lengthy white on the Utah Jazz. That makes a ton of sense. Hedo Turkoglu. Yeah, I can see that comparison. Let's just hope he doesn't urinate on anyone. Check out the JJ Redick podcast if you don't understand exactly what that means. But anyway, Matas Buzelis, somebody that I've made it pretty clear I don't really understand the hype or whatever, and I'm actually curious to see what mixed feelings. Like, every scout that I talk to, and I talk to a decent amount of NBA scouts, like, I don't understand it, and a lot of them don't either. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, he was like one of the top people in the recruiting class, so we want to say that he's a lot better than he is. We've seen spurts of him, though, like being a decent ball handler, attacking closeouts. Like, I think his shooting's actually fine. I just think that's kind of where he caps out. Like, I look at his frame and everything, and I don't see him, like, ever really filling out that much more. That's just kind of my eye with things. So I don't really see him being able to attack. And honestly, I don't think his handle's very good at all, at least in my opinion. I could see him being a floor spacing like wing, though, that maybe eventually becomes a decent defender. But I don't know, man. I don't really see it. As far as him on Utah, like you got him in Lowry, and you could hope that Lowry develops him a little bit, but maybe I'd try to take somebody with a little more upside if I was the Utah Jazz. That's at least how I'd look at it. Next up, we got Dalton Knecht. Ooh, moving up the draft as well. Yeah, no, it's hard not to. A Wally Szczerbiak comparison. I think that's a little bit of a disservice to Knecht. He's a lot more athletic. You can give him the Tyler Hero comparison, or like he's like a Tyler Hero Pat Connaughton like hybrid because he's like a good athlete too. So I'm gonna throw him there. But Dalton Knecht, one of the most lethal scorers in the country this last season, a little bit older, right? He's 22, he's a senior, but 6'6", 200 pounds. Nice NBA prospect size and everything. If Reed Sheppard was this size, Reed Sheppard could be considered to go number one, right? That's just how it is. But Dalton Knecht, shot-making ability from everywhere. Can put the ball on the floor, can attack, can finish. Offensively, he can do it all, man. He's just a bucket getter. Overall shot maker, love it. He's got a little bit of attitude to him. His athleticism's like actually pretty good, especially off like 2 feet, which is pretty valuable if he's not that heavy. So if you can play off 2, that's a really nice thing. I like his game a ton. I think all of us envision him ending up on the Miami Heat somehow and just being an absolute killer. But throwing him on the Hawks, I mean, that makes some sense. Some more floor spacing around Trey and DeJounte if they try to keep that duo together, right? They need more wings on that team that can really consistently shoot. I think that makes a ton of sense. Obviously, the criticism of him is going to be his age because he is a lot older and what his ceiling could possibly be. But in this draft, like, if you can walk away with an NBA contributor off the bench that can just go get you some buckets, which I think you can, that'd make a ton of sense. I'll be curious to see if when he goes into the NBA, when he doesn't have the ball like all the time, how does he adjust, right? Because if he ends up on the Hawks, he's not touching the ball like ever, right? He's going to be like a floor spacer and things like that. Is he a guy that needs to get cooking just a little bit more? I've seen him do enough catch and shoot stuff, but if that's all he's doing, I'm just curious to see the result. But yeah, no, I like Knecht a lot. I think he's a killer, man. Number 11, my Bulls. Ooh, Cody Williams. If we walk away with Cody Williams, I'll actually be pretty excited about that. Cody Williams is getting compared to Jaden McDaniels, 6'9", 190. Yeah, he's raw, man. That's the right way to describe him, is he's raw. For those of you that don't know, this is Jalen Williams' brother from OKC. Yeah, his younger brother plays for Colorado. He's a little bit bigger than him, a little bit longer, and we've seen just a little bit of everything from him. A little bit of shooting, a little bit of ball handling, a little bit of defense. He just looks like the guy that if you get him developing the right way, he could be a really, really nice NBA player. Like, this is one of those, like, one of the few instances in this draft where you go, okay, there's a lot of upside here, right? And so that's what I like about him. And if I'm the Bulls at 11, oh yeah, I'm taking the upside pick for sure. What else the fuck are we gonna do, right? And so I would love this pick for him. I envisioned him ending up in Memphis, and I've talked about this a couple other times on the channel because Memphis needs like that other ball handler in like the starting 5, and not that he would be a primary, but he'd be kind of the secondary ball handler. So when Ja goes and kicks, like, Cody Williams can kind of keep things going, because I don't really think Desmond Bane, like, that's a great part of his game or anything. So I could see him being like a second or third ball handler in an offense eventually, and maybe making some playmaking decisions. I've seen him operate in the pick and roll. It's pretty interesting. I'll do a whole breakdown on him at some point, but I love the idea of Cody Williams, especially on the Bulls. Next up, we have Jared McCain rising up the ranks at the number 11 spot. Emmanuel Quickley. That's a fair comparison, actually. I actually like that comparison a lot. So basically, undersized guard and everything, 6'3", 197. Maybe not like the most athletic person in the world, especially not like vertically or anything like that. Like, he's not going to really get up and punch on somebody. He's not the quickest. He has to use a lot of like kind of push-off moves to get away from people. So I don't know how well his offensive game translates, but the reason they compare him to Quickley is because I feel like he could play off-ball really well, and his catch and shoot numbers are awesome. Obviously, a lot of people like really hate on this dude, and I'm not gonna lie, I find the TikToks just cringy as well. Like, I don't hate him for it or whatever. It's just, when I was growing up, like, if you did shit like that, like, you would have gotten your ass kicked the next day at school. And I'm not saying he deserves to get his ass kicked or anything. I don't know. I just look at it, I'm like, oh, why do you like to do this? It like sends shivers down my spine. But like, I don't care, man. If it makes him happy, it makes him happy. But as far as like basketball goes, I think his game's not going to translate to the NBA as well because of what I just said. I think he's going to be physically limited a little bit, and with his size, I don't know if he can be like a point guard in the NBA. Whenever I say stuff like this, like, I always think back to people saying that about Steph Curry, and like, God damn it, then were we all wrong? But, you know, that's a rare instance, right? But that's what I see out of this. And I think Jared McCain would be better off staying at Duke. They have a chance to win a national championship next year with the team that they got coming in. Just go dominate there. Go make some NIL money. You'll probably make more in NIL money than you'll make on your rookie contract, in all honesty. So if I'm Jared McCain, I'm just going there. As far as him going to the Thunder, that doesn't make sense, man. They don't need any more guards like that. They would take a wing for sure. So don't see it. Next one, the Trailblazers again with Kyle Filipowski. Santi Aldama is the comparison. That's kind of interesting. I feel like they have the same like demeanor and everything, but I'm kind of like falling out of love with Filipowski. I wasn't in love with Filipowski, but I was like, okay, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And I saw him as more of a Brook Lopez type, someone that could eventually play like really good NBA defense, is obviously capable from the outside. He's got good size. Let's take a look at that. 7 foot 250. Love it, right? He's 20 years old. There's time to develop. He looks like a modern NBA big. That's cool. I don't know. I feel like he got like so bullied though in the tournament at times. And that's where I'm like, okay, how much toughness is there and everything? Like, I'd really want to talk to this guy before I ended up drafting him. But wait, didn't Portland in this mock draft take Clingan? Am I tripping when I say that? Okay. Whoever made this mock draft is fucking high as hell. Like, what are y'all doing? That doesn't make any sense. Do y'all even think about this, or are you just ranking the players? But anyway, like, Filipowski can shoot a little bit, defend a little bit. I find it interesting. The Portland Trailblazers doesn't make any sense if you took Clingan earlier. I need to see him in an NBA offense, because like Duke was not running anything that was like really helping him out at all this year either. So I'd be curious to see him in like a pick and pop with a dynamic guard or something that could really get downhill. So I don't know. I'm not like out on Filipowski. I'm just maybe not as high as I once was. And last lottery pick, Isaiah Collier. Okay, so we didn't see Collier play like a ton this year. He was hurt for a lot of points. I feel like people are going to fall in love with him because there's so much mystery to him and you didn't get to see him play as much, and people will be like, oh, I can teach him to shoot, but thick guard. That's what you need to know. Thick guard. 6'5", 210, true freshman, very nice playmaker, very athletic, gets to the rim just fine. Can't shoot at all, though, and turns the ball over a shit ton. So here's my thing with a guy like Collier, right, is that, like, you love the physicality of and all those gifts, but this to me screams a guy that's just not going to stick in the NBA, because I feel like if you have turnovers at the college level being a lead ball handler and you can't shoot, like, coming in and playing NBA point guard has got to be, like, the hardest thing to do, and I feel like he's going to fizzle out quickly, because if you can't read the college game that's really simple in basketball terms, you're going to go play in the NBA, I feel like they're going to take you apart, man. So, obviously, like, you can get better, right? You can always get better. It's just, that's my instinct with it. As far as the fit with New Orleans, like, I think that makes some sense. I think that's probably a player that they would be interested in. As far as bringing non-shooters around Zion, that's always going to be a question, but, like, what are your other options here? I guess, like, maybe go find, like, another center or something like that. Like, I guess Mizzy's still available in this draft, or maybe you just trade back and try to find you another big or something. But Filipowski would make a lot more sense on New Orleans, actually. That'd be kind of interesting with him next to Zion. But with Collier, I'm not too high on it. Like, I'll hope for the best for him, but not where it goes. But all right, I'm going to look through the rest of this draft now since we're done with the lottery, and I'll point out some other players that I think are interesting. Ooh, at 17, Terrence Shannon Jr. Okay, so I'm going to make a bold call right now. I would take Terrence Shannon Jr. with a top 10 draft pick. I really would. That's in part because of the quality of this draft class. But I've watched enough Terrence Shannon Jr. now to think that even though despite his age and everything, he's 23, I know, but he's got great NBA size and he's got a lot of the NBA moves already. The concern would be, you know, he's going to come and he's obviously not going to be a starter. Like, can he just be a bench scorer, or we just kind of give him the ball right away? But like, he's the best finisher in this draft. Like, if you put him in transition, he's elite. Athleticism's elite. His ability to finish with either hand, wherever on the hoop, can put it up on the backboard in any space and make it go in. That's elite stuff right there. Like, I love that. And he's got a lot of the moves to get himself open for his own three-pointer. Like, he is a shot creator at the 2/3, which is very valuable. And he's a really good defender. Like, that might be the best part of his game is his defense, in my opinion, at least. So I'm taking Terrence Shannon Jr. with a top 10 pick. I truly think he can come in and be influential right away, but I understand that Clingan like cleaned him up and everything. Put him in an NBA offense and we'll see what happens. And Clingan might just be that good defensively anyway. But no, I really, really like Terrence Shannon Jr. and sending him to Toronto with all the other wings, why the hell not? 19th pick, Jacoby Walters, kind of interesting. Jacoby Walters had points this year where he's been in like the top 10, just because there is some like elite shot making stuff there. I think we look at kind of the guy from in Utah this year. What the hell is his name? Keontae George. I couldn't remember his name for the life of me, but I could picture him in my head. Like, I think we see something like that where he's got some ball handling skills. He's got some shot creating skills. He just hasn't been very efficient yet. That somebody's going to maybe take a chance on him. Phoenix would be a good place for him to end up if that's where he went, but just someone to watch. Ooh, 20, Tyler Smith is also an interesting player. Every scout that I talked to about him, and I haven't watched a ton of film on him, they just tell me, they're like, we can't figure out if this guy's elite or not. Because I think all of us that like evaluate this talent all have the bell going off in our head that like screams that this guy's like a really, really good basketball player. But like something's not quite clicking and I can't figure out what it is. I can't figure out if he's just like a floor spacing big or if he's like a Miles Bridges type where like he can like really catch, rip, create his own shot and like be a connecting point in an offense. I don't know. Like I said, the bell's going off in my head that's like, hey, develop this guy, develop this guy, develop this guy. Like it's there. I can't pinpoint why it is. And a lot of people seem to agree with me on that. So let's watch out for Tyler Smith, see where he ends up. I'd love to see him in Orlando. That makes a ton of sense. 23rd pick, Yves Missy, just one of those run, jump, and dunk guys that I think is always pretty reliable. You always have to question the Baylor players a little bit because they don't always come in with the most like basketball IQ. That's just what it is, y'all. I'm just saying it. It is what it is. Trust me, I know what goes on in that Baylor program. Y'all can't hide it from me. But anyway, really, really like him. Size, athleticism, all that stuff is great. Could be a nice backup center that you plug in right away to your team next year. Throwing him on Cleveland, yeah, why the hell not, man? Like, let's just keep 7-foot rim defenders in at all times. I love it. Ooh, and Zach Edey keeps on climbing the board. I know he's kind of climbing my board a little bit as well, where I'm like, okay, you know what? Late first round pick, I'll take him now. It was all the way up to like an early second. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll give him a 4-year rookie contract. Let me see what happens. I think Edey has improved his athleticism like a ton, and that's awesome. And him on Milwaukee would be awesome. That would be so cool. Obviously, the size and strength and everything going to help him out defensively. If you pull him out to the perimeter, I think that's where he's going to struggle a little bit more, and teams are 100% going to do that to him. It's not an if, it's a they will. And that's where he's going to struggle a lot more. So how do you kind of build a defense around him to where you can maybe run some bump off action and keep him in the paint? But like offensively, you know, if he can be a rim runner at times and operate in a dunker spot where he can just go up and catch a lob or something, I think that's great because I don't think they're going to dump it down to him like a whole bunch. But who knows? Maybe in Milwaukee, maybe that is something that they try to do. But yeah, no, I would say that he's worthy of this pick at this point. I'd support that. I'm going to point out this guy probably every time I get to it. They have him at number 44, Justin Edwards. Freshman out of Kentucky, was a very highly touted high school player. A lot of gifts and everything, just didn't quite put it all together in his first year. And this could be a guy that very well just fizzles out like as soon as he comes into the NBA because he just didn't stay in college long enough, didn't develop long enough. But there's a lot of skill there. And so if the right person hones it in, aka the Miami Heat, and that's why I'm highlighting it, could be pretty interesting. All right, I didn't find anybody else to be that interesting. It's a weaker draft class, y'all. It just is. But that doesn't mean that there's not something to find in here and there's not holes that can be filled. I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting picks in here. And, like, I'd be really excited if I was a team that got Alexander Sarr, Zaccharie Risacher. Like, I'm thrilled about that. But for the time being, that's the latest mock draft. That's where things are settling for now. Like I said, biggest thing I want to see right now is Nikola Topic film. I just need to see more of it. But yeah, we'll break down some of that stuff at another time. But until then, remember, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments are the best things, man. I love the comments. I love talking about this stuff with you. I really do. Even if you think my opinions are shit, that's great. Like, tell me about it. I'd love to learn. Like, I really would. But anyway, appreciate you guys as always, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.